Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is my 1.0 playthrough where I attempt to load balance all of my factories throughout the whole game. Why? Because for some twisted reason, I find this fun. In the last video, I set up my first major fuel power plant using the Diluted Packaged Fuel alt recipe. I'm now producing just over 21,000 megawatts of power. To prepare for my permanent factory that will supply dimensional depots with all the essential parts, I need to replace my temporary oil setup. Let's start off with a brief little train ride. As you can see, I've done a bit of work out here in the desert. Since I would really prefer these videos to be focused around building a factory, I'm going to leave all of that work that I've done out there for the next video, so we're kind of skipping around a little bit. But this video is going to be focused out here in the Spire Coast. So obviously, train station, not even close to being done yet. Let's turn that off so it doesn't honk at me. Alright. So we've got our lovely 18 gigawatt power plant. And there's the temporary oil factory. I can't believe out of all the temporary factories, this is going to be the first one to get deleted. Not exactly how I thought things were going to go, but that's because I only plan things out so far in advance. So that's what I'm going to do next. I am just going to mass delete pretty much everything down here, and we are going to create a factory that replaces it. So by the end of this video, I'm going to get the rubber turned on. So right now I'm making 100 plastic and 100 rubber, and then some fuel and some other stuff with it. I'm not going to be able to get the entire new factory turned on, and I'll explain that when I get to that part. But for now, we're going to be focusing on the rubber. Although I am going to build pretty much most of the other machines just because I need to make sure that it all fits. I'm going to try to make this at least a little compact. Oh, perfect. This is actually one that I needed. Oh, good timing. Alright, well, let's get to deleting. Sure looks different. So I went ahead and deleted everything, and you can see those storage containers in the back. They just have pretty much all of the pieces. So a useful tip I'm sure most of you know, but if you use the dismantle tool, you can kind of see what's in there. So obviously these are made with 20 steel beams and 20 steel pipes, but then I can tell what the contents are. So place some extra ones that I didn't need, but a bunch of these just have some random pieces, and then empty canisters, and ammo, and smokeless powder. I was thinking about where to put this factory, and then the thought came to me that this is a really kind of long ramp, and normally I would want some sort of support because they're much more often during straight pieces, and I haven't made a support for the ramps quite yet. So instead of doing that, I figured, why not build the factory underneath this ramp so the trains will basically just run on top of the roof. So that's why I'm doing it right here. I'm going to build it around the train track, so that will be basically the roof, and I've got all of this space to work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoop up probably all 10, and I'm going to give myself kind of a barrier to work with. So we're going to clip these ones just into the rock, but I don't want any of the rock to come through. So this will kind of give me an outline of the back end of my factory. Alright, now that I've got a little bit more space to work with, and I've got my the back end of the factory set, let's go ahead and go up here. Now, if I did everything down here, I would have a huge ceiling, which is totally fine. There'd be nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I've got a whole bunch of extra space that I really could work with. So I think I'm actually going to take the top 2 layers off. We're only going to go up 8 here. And with the use of blueprints, we're going to go ahead and lay down a second floor. But not much will go up here, so we don't need a ton of space. So with this really rough outline set, let me show you where the machines are roughly going to get placed, and then I'm going to skip ahead to where I have them, exactly where I need them, because the placing's a little bit particular, and it took me a while to find it. Let me quickly run through the flow chart to give you an idea of what's going to be happening. I'm going to be taking 135 crude oil and 360 water. Using the diluted packaged fuel recipe, I'll end up with 360 fuel and 90 polymer resin. Using that 90 polymer resin and the 360 fuel is how we do everything else. So with the resin, I am going to take 3 refineries and some water, and that will create 45 rubber. That rubber is going to go into the next step, which actually requires 120 rubber per minute. And I'm going to be using 1/3 of my fuel to create 240 plastic. I then take that 240 plastic, combine it with the remaining 2/3 of the fuel, and it'll output 480 rubber. Because that first step is short 75 rubber, I'm going to take 75 from the final output and cycle it back to that middle step, and that's going to give me 405 rubber in total. Alright, so on this top floor, the only thing that I'm going to have is 10 refineries, and they're all going to be positioned this way, where the input is on this side, output on that side. So I'm just going to end up slamming down 10 of these in a row. All of these refineries on this floor are all going to be set for the heavy oil residue, and they are going to be underclocked so that they're only outputting 30 per minute. With the output facing this way, I'm going to go ahead and slap down floor holes somewhere around here for each one of these, and this is where the heavy oil residue is going to go. So we're going to feed it from here down to the bottom floor. So right underneath this, I am going to carve out probably this area right about here. And this is where my water extractors are going to go. For the diluted packaged fuel recipe, I'm going to need some packagers. And then after the packagers is going to go more refineries. And these ones are going to be doing the diluted packaged fuel. So these ones we want to get lined up with those floor holes. So we'll just place it somewhere around here. Obviously it's going to need to be farther out because of the packager. But then I'm just going to run the heavy oil residue here on the roof, and then I'm going to have it just come down into this machine. So good old gravity feed into here, and then it's going to get the packaged water from the packagers that'll be right here. So right down here, I'm going to have a row of 10 refineries that'll pretty much mirror the ones on top. So this process will give me my packaged fuel. From there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 refineries, and they'll be a bit spaced out. These ones won't be right next to each other. These 3 refineries are all going to be doing the residual rubber. However, I don't have 120 polymer resin, so I can't clock these all to 100%. I have 90 total, so I need each one of these to intake 30 instead of 40, which would be 75%. So these will be taking the polymer resin from that first step and turning it all into rubber. So these will be outputting rubber. So the next step is we have another set of refineries, and this is actually going to take 4 refineries. These 4 refineries are all going to be set to the recycled plastic recipe, and these are all going to be set to 100%. So if I have 4 of them, that means I need a total of 120 rubber. However, these 3 will only be outputting 15 each, so I only have 45 out of the 120. The other part that's required is the fuel. I think I forgot to mention, I have 10 total for each of these stages. I'm using the 2 impure nodes that are over there. I'm actually only using half of it for this rubber process. The other half will be for a future project. But since I want all of this in one factory, I'm building all of that at the same time. Okay, my apologies. I said earlier that it was going to be 10 on top and then 10 down here. It's actually 12 on top and 12 down here. Just got the numbers wrong. So half of this is going to be doing the rubber. The other half is going to be dealing with a future project. 6 refineries doing the diluted packaged fuel will give me 360 fuel per minute to work with. The way I do the recycled rubber plastic, they're fairly interchangeable, although because of this very first step, the amounts in the end are very slightly different. But the idea is kind of the same, where you take the polymer resin from the first step, you create what you're trying to make, you then use the recycled recipe, and you're going to use 1/3 of your fuel for this step. And then you're going to use 2/3 of your fuel for the last step. So since I used 4 refineries here, This step is actually going to require 8. Since I'm mixing the rubber and the fuel, and I'm going to get double the plastic that I put in for rubber, I'm then going to be able to basically split each one of these and feed the same process over here. So now we're going to take all of that plastic, the remaining 2/3 of the fuel, and we'll double that amount and turn it into rubber. So with all of the numbers being fairly even with this amount, and that's why I'm using only 135 crude oil instead of the full 150 I could be getting, is this is all just super even numbers to work with. Since I have 6 refineries making the diluted packaged fuel, that means 4 of them will feed this process and 2 of them will feed this process. The one thing I forgot to mention is each one of these rows, this one and this one, are going to need packagers in front of the refineries so that I can take the packaged fuel, unpackage it, feed these machines, and then the canisters will loop back to these packagers and it'll create a nice little closed loop for me. Let's skip ahead so the machines are where they're actually supposed to be, and I can go through some of this belt and pipe work. So this is kind of what I had in mind. So here is the train tracks, and then I just have the roof starting just below it because I thought it would be cooler if the train was just above where the roof is, so that it looks like it's kind of placed on top. So, and then I've got some windows and whatnot, and we've got the machines placed where they're supposed to be, and most of them are color coordinated to what they're doing. But let's start here up at the top. So like I mentioned, these ones are all going to be doing the heavy oil residue. So I'm going to have the crude oil come over through here. Each pipe is going to feed half of these machines. Each pipe is going to feed 6 machines. So the way I think this is easiest, I could definitely just manifold these, especially since I'm planning on letting the pipes back up. There's really not a huge reason to do this, except for I just like the way that it looks, so now I just do it with most things. So we'll just go ahead and line up those. And then to bring them together, we'll just place another one somewhere around here. Only reason I'm not being super compact up here is because these are the only machines up here, so it really doesn't matter. Downstairs, things will get a little bit more compact. And that's basically how I'm going to do this. For the output, I'm going to, I don't know if there's really much of a difference. We'll go with horizontal to vertical. Each one of these are going to feed one of the corresponding refineries below doing the diluted packaged fuel. But that's not the only output for these machines, so I also need to get rid of that polymer resin. For the resin, I'm just going to lay down a line of mergers, and they're each going to go in a opposite direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one can just plug into that one, and then this one can plug right into here. Each machine outputs 15 resin, so I can just use Mark 1 going out of the machine. And then the last two need to be Mark 2. So in total, I'm going to have 90. So it should be 15, 30, 45. Here's 60. So actually, this only needs to be... So I will need to use a Mark 2 out of here when I take it downstairs. So I'll just set up a lift, and I'm going to have that come down to about here. For these kind of setups where you need the polymer resin to get everything working, this is how I like to do it. Where I'll use a storage buffer, and instead of having this connect directly to these 3 refineries that are going to be turning that into rubber, I can leave that disconnected, and so that most of the things and the liquids will all back up. The whole system won't get started until I connect this storage container with the splitter going into these 3 refineries. It'll probably make more sense later. So I'll bring down the polymer resin, and that's going to go into here. But let's work on this part first, and then we'll get to the rest of that. I forgot to show this off when I was making my power plant over there, but one of the weird things that I've noticed is the height of the water, or where the water extractors sit, can be a little bit different in certain places. So as you'll see, none of these are sitting on foundations. I didn't lay the foundation underneath like I do sometimes. And it gives them all just ever so slightly different heights, which is really weird. So I may change that, but I probably won't look at it too often. And I really didn't even notice that it was that different until just now. That's really weird. But anyways, I created this blueprint right here. So it's just two little platforms close to each other. I'm using the high barriers to kind of cover up the foundations. But that way these sit 2 meters higher than they normally would, so that I can get the actual S-bend in the pipe that I was looking for with the horizontal to vertical mode that I wasn't quite getting all the time at my other plant. And this gives me a way to walk under it, even though I'm going to actually fill this up with belts, to be honest. But it has the effect of letting me be able to walk under it over here, which is kind of cool. So each packager is packaging the water. They're set to 100%, and that goes straight into a refinery. For the heavy oil residue, I'm just going to run these across the roof, which I think should be right there. And then from there, we'll just go straight into the machine. And then we'll do that for each one. Packaged water flows in, and so out of here, we've got our packaged fuel. So I'll go ahead and pair up every 2. And I'm just going to not worry about the other 6 for right now. Like I mentioned, those are for a different project. Alright, so let's work with these. In general, whenever I'm dealing with both inputs for the refinery, I prefer to have the solids be up higher, just so I have to deal with head lift less with the rest of them. So with that in place, I can kind of figure out where I can put my pipe. So right there would be good. Alright, now with the splitter, we just want to get it in line, but then we want to get it flush with the edge of the lift. So we can put that there, and then we'll go ahead and go up to the 3rd spot. Let's leave that random one placed. And then do have to replace the lift. And it would help if I place the splitter in the right place. And then you get that click, and there we go. And then from here, I can connect it to the other 2 lifts. And those will all be nice, right 90-degree angles. And so we can go ahead and just drag this out. And this right here is where we'll connect it to the storage unit, which I guess I placed in the wrong spot. We'll get this lined up straight, so we'll move that over, and that's where that's going to get plugged in. Alright, so for here, we just need to place 1 water extractor. And then we'll just go ahead and get that connected to there. But I don't need it at 100% because I only have 3 of these and they only need 30 each. This can be set to 90. There we go. That looks better. Alright, so now to deal with this next little section here. Normally I would start with the outputs of these and kind of put them into here, but I'm actually going to start with these first. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and do the solids. So we'll go ahead and put these just facing each other. We'll get a splitter right in the middle. Go ahead and bring that up. But with the top one, I'm actually going to have it 180 from where you think it would go. And we can go ahead and connect these. Mark 1 belts are fine for this. Do the same thing on this side. Delete the bottom 2. Where did that go? Okay. There we go. Alright, so this is where I'm trying to get the load balancing more compact. And then with this one, because this is in the middle, this is where these 3 are going to get grouped up, is on this line right here. So we need to get this lined up. And is this in line with the others? It is. Alright, so with this one, we can go 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go one higher. So we're going to go 4. Delete these ones. Now, I find it easiest just to build a temporary foundation. You could just zoop it up into the right spot, but it's just a lot easier to find the right spot if you have the foundation. And since there's not a lot of space, you may just want to add a second one, make it a little bit easier on yourself. I grab a stackable conveyor pole, and then I want it right on the edge of the foundation because that's where the edge of the splitter comes to. If I place it there, I'm going to snap it to this first, and then the splitter. And then I've got my little short lift. And I can delete these. All done. Go ahead and just do the same thing on this side. Place it right on the edge. Alright, and then from here, using the straight mode, I can connect that right to that splitter. So from here to here. And there we go. It really doesn't stick out any farther than a manifold would. Sure, it does go up higher. But it's a decent way to make it a little bit more compact, especially with the refineries being so tall, you've got all that space. So with this side, to make my life easier, I'm just going to go up the 2 more notches, and that will be level with this. So then I'm just going to grab a merger, find the right spot, which should be right there, and then we'll just go up 4, delete the bottom 3, and the lift. Snap it right in, and then these ones, 1, 2 notches up, 2, and then I can just go ahead and bring them all together. So this is 15, 15, and 15, so I can just go ahead and use a Mark 1. Now, instead of just connecting this straight in, what I'm going to do is right on this right here should be in line. So let's go ahead and bring up a merger in line with that. I'm going to bring the 45 into here. But this process, like I mentioned, needs 120. So we can go ahead and just put a Mark 2. So this merger is where I'm going to bring in the missing 75. And I'm going to get that from the very end process. So we'll split that off, plug it into this merger, and that's how this whole loop works at 100%. And as far as the packages go, that's pretty easy. We just need one splitter here in the middle. And then this Mark II belt will get ran over somewhere around here and into there. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a merger, and actually I'm not sure how close this needs to be. Let's see. So let's go ahead and grab our pipeline junction, make sure it's in line with the packager. And yep, that looks like the right spot. So with this, I just want the shortest distance to get it up to that height. So it's easiest if you place it and then lock it in the right height. You can get to the build mode you want, and then you can nudge it into just the right spot. So that's about as close as I can get it. And then we'll just connect it there and delete that junction. Delete that support, and then we can go ahead and color everything. Alright, so we've got the packaged fuel going in here. These are set to the unpackaged fuel. Since each of these refineries need 30, that's why one of these is splitting it to 2 of them. Just really nice numbers to work with sometimes. So that's clipping a lot into the pipe, so I don't normally like to get them this close, but for now, we're just going to do it. I know it's only 60 into there, and then I can go ahead and just connect this one right to there, and then this Mark II is going to go on a little bit of a journey. So I'm going to fix this later. So this, I might as well show it. So I know I've mentioned it before, and soon, maybe even the next video, I'll show you how to make these. I just love these blueprints. I have one for just about every orientation that I use. whole stubby here. So if I place one here and then change it to the other orientation, then I can place that there. And then change to Mark 2. Now, I saved them as Mark 1 because I don't want to make it for every single different speed of lifts. So, but when you do change it to Mark 2, they are no longer blueprints like they were before. A little quirk, but something to just remember. And then we're going to have this belt go all the way back here. I'm going to tidy this up. Don't worry. And this is going to feed into these two packagers right here. That one was just for show. So for these, it's really easy. Since there's only two of them, we can just slap a splitter right down. Actually, I guess we should do this first. So if you ever have them this distance, you need a gap of 3 meters. So it would be right there. From here, I can take my lift, connect it to the conveyor pole, and it'll snap right into the splitter. You could go one farther out, and then you'd have the accordion down here and up here, but I really don't mind it being flush with the splitter like that, and it gives me a little bit more room to work with. And then we can just plug these up to the splitter, and then this right here is going to connect to that one. And that right there is the loop of the canisters for this first step. It'll be very similar to this one. Now the difference with this one is it's even easier to do the belt work because all I have to do for this is that right there. Because this is going to output 60 plastic, and each of these machines need 30 each. So I can just take one and plug it into two of them. I love being able to do stuff like this. If you can make it super simple, it works really well. So these are all really easy, so let's just get that out of the way. Let's split up the packaged fuel in between these packagers. I'm going to do something similar I did over there, so I'm going to have the input be facing this way, and then we're going to get these right in the middle. That one goes there. This one goes here. Yep. And then this one will go in line with these, but facing the opposite direction. And it's going to go one up higher. Alright, so we go 60 into there, 60 into there. And then we just used the stackable pole. You could use the other pole, it's just harder to delete. Just as an example, I'll show you. You could do all of this with just the normal one, and it would work the same. I just find the stackable one is much easier to be able to find and delete, because you don't want the belt to connect to that. You want it to connect to the actual lift. So we can connect these up now. And then from here, sometimes this is a little bit of guesswork coming off of a splitter like this. Let's see. But a belt should fit right on this line. So I think if we line it up in the middle and we go over one, if I go from the splitter down to the floor, no. If I go, nope, not there. So, and this is why I blueprint all of the little ones, because this can be really finicky. Alright, there we go. This is 60 and this is 60, so this belt actually needs to be 120, and that's 120. So this right here needs to be 240. So we've got a Mark III that just squeaks past those lifts, and that is going to plug up to these two right here. Alright, and then I can do the same thing with the pipes. So we go up 2, lock it in place, and then just nudge it to where you get the nice turn. Delete that one, and in goes that. Alright, with these in place, we can place the mergers. So I'm going to do the same thing. That just clipped too much, and I didn't give myself enough room to give myself those extra meter gaps everywhere. So we're just going to make these nice and close. So thankfully, I do know that these only need to be Mark 1, and I don't ever plan on overclocking these, so I shouldn't ever have to change this belt. Alright, so if we have 60 from here and 60 from this machine, that means this needs to be Mark 2. And then this one needs to be Mark 3. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to bring this all the way around. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll just use a short little lift to get up over the pipe. And then I'll connect it to those last packages over there. Alright, so that's that section done. Now the final one. All of these refineries are doing the recycled rubber, outputting 60 rubber. So with 8 refineries, 60 each, that is 480. And as luck would have it, that is the most I can fit on a belt right now. So we're going to go ahead and just merge them all up together. And then we're going to split them up. I can just use Mark 1 for all of these. Alright, so out of here, I've got 480. But, as I mentioned before, I need 75 of that to go back over there. Now, 75 out of 480 isn't necessarily the easiest thing to split off. But now, I have smart splitters. And smart splitters are fantastic for this sort of thing. Especially because when this is all up and running at 100%, this belt is going to be 100% full. Which means I don't have to do any of the split belt speed trick things that I've done in the past. I can just rely on the overflow and everything working just as you would think it normally should. So we are going to send the priority is to the left, overflow is to straight ahead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with 120. So 75 out of 120 is 0.625 or 5/8. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take 120 and we're going to go ahead and put it into a splitter. So from here, we're going to split that in half. So half is going to go there. Other half is going to go straight into a merger. What I'm trying to do is split off 75 and then have all the rest of it grouped together and head off to the train. So from here, we've got 120. So here's 60 and here's 60. So from here, I need to add some more mergers. So let's add a merger here. So we've got 60 going into here. So we'll send 30 back. And then this 30 is going to go on to another splitter. So that's 30 right there. And we're going to go ahead and add our last merger here. So if we split this 30 into 15 and 15, I've got 60 from that original split and 15. So this right here is my 75. And from here, we can go ahead and continue on merge 4. Merge up those. And that right here as our 405 that we're sending on to the factory. And now I just need to take this one right here. And I think this was the one that was 1 too higher. And need to make sure that it's Mark 2. And I'm going to bring that one all the way down here to, oh, too far. This merger. And there we go. So that right there, oh, I guess I didn't get the height quite right. I'll fix that. But that is how I'm going to, oh, it's this one that I didn't get right. There we go. There to there. Okay. Now it doesn't look so weird. And that kind of completes that little feedback loop that you need, so this whole thing runs at 100%. Because the initial polymer resin to rubber isn't enough to feed this. So if you're wondering why in the world I would do all of this load balancing when I could have just taken one machine of 60 and then split the output of one of these into quarters, which would give me the 15, and then just have that bit grouped back, and I wouldn't have to deal with all of this. And the reason I like doing it this way is this really ensures that this will get up to speed much quicker. You are at a little bit of a race against time because you only have so much polymer resin built up in your storage container. Or that is part of the reason why I like doing it this way, is it gives you more of a buffer time. That buffer will feed these, but these only feed the second process 3/8 of what they need. So you're only going to be running at 37.5% efficiency until you start getting this part to cycle back. And then this will run at 100%, which will then make this run at 100%. So if you're only relying on 2 machines and their output to cycle back, it just takes a lot longer, whereas now I'm siphoning off 75 from the total output, which just means you're feeding back a little bit more. It may not seem like it, but in practice, this does just start up just a bit faster. And kind of ensures that I won't run out of polymer resin before this all gets working. Because if these aren't running, then I'm not consuming the fuel. And if I'm not consuming the fuel, then we're not making heavy oil residue, which isn't making the polymer resin, which makes this all start. So that is the method to all of this madness. And if you're curious what all of this is, because I've only kind of hinted at it, the other half of the machines are going to be making the same diluted packaged fuel, but then I'm going to be taking it over here and I'm going to be turning it into packaged turbo fuel. So I want both packaged fuel and turbo fuel sent to my factory. And the reason I'm making so much packaged turbo fuel is I'm building for the future. I want that one node to be able to provide for all of the packaged fuel in the future. Because after turbo fuel, I'll eventually unlock rocket fuel. And so then I'll be able to take a majority of the turbo fuel, but not all of it, and turn some of it into rocket fuel, and then do the same thing with the ionized fuel at the end. So that's why I'm making so much, and that's what this section is going to be for. For this to work, I need to be making compacted coal and empty packages, because I need to feed this with a continuous amount of packages since those are going to storage and not just getting emptied and reused like I am over here. So I wanted to make sure it all fit, and I've got some space for building in the future. I've got a few more refineries I'm going to put in here, but this is really what the focus of this episode is about. So let me go ahead and place some more things. I'm going to load up the canisters, but this is the bulk of the work. The rest of it is going to be, putting some more roof on top, and I'm going to add a bunch of walkways so that we can get around the place. And then it's my favorite part. Time to take a tour. But before we get to the main factory, let's start out here. So I added the little housing to the oil extractors, and we've got the head lift where we need it to be. And I went ahead and powered these on first, and then disconnect it. So I just took the main power line, ran it over here, powered up just these, got the pipes completely full, and then deleted that and connected it to the main power. So when I flip the switch, these will turn back on. But for now, all of the crude oil is completely full in these pipes, which just saves quite a bit of time. And if we follow these pipes, they just come along here. Obviously, it's still not finished. There's quite a bit of cosmetics to do, but since we're only turning on half of the factory, I figured I'd save a little bit for later. So let's start up at the top. So we've got some stairs to take me up here, and then I figured it'd be kind of fun to have this as glass floor so I could look down at the rest of the factory and out at everything else. This is a pretty cool view of the whole thing, in my opinion. So up here, we've just got the crude oil being turned into the heavy oil residue. Nothing's really changed back here. All of this was pretty simple. I just wanted to use up this space, and since I needed 12 refineries for this, it seemed like a good spot. These all fit in this area, and none of the smokestacks are clipping through the ceiling. So if we go down here, you can see I've added a whole bunch of walkways all over the place, because what's really cool is you can't connect wall connections to the actual walkways, but if you use the frame floors, that'll give you a place to snap the wall outlets to. And then over here, I went ahead and added this little thing just to kind of hide the storage container, because just when they're out in the open, it just kind of looks weird. And I wanted to do a little bit of load balancing, because what I'm gonna do is this isn't connected, And if you're wondering, I just put a portrait sign that's just completely blank to kind of hide it so you can't see into the room and it's just a black hole that way. When I turn this whole thing on, it'll run for quite a while. We'll get the fuel backed up into all of these machines, but the polymer resin won't be connected until I make this belt here. And that way we'll just stack up all of that polymer resin, which is just coming through a lift that's behind here. This is where the pipes are going up. I really wish the windows were just a tad bit easier to see through, maybe a tad less reflective. Maybe it's just because this is outside. Those 3 refineries need a total of 90 polymer resin, which is what those 6 refineries are outputting that are making the heavy oil residue. But I have to use a Mark II belt. So this was just the really easy way to split off a quarter of it. So we've got 120 going into here, 60 into this splitter, 60 going into the merger. That 60 is then getting split, 30 into here, 30 gets fed back into the storage container. So that's how we get our 90, and the belt won't have to do that start and stop thing. Other than those changes, the only things I really did was add the rest of the roof and then do all of the cable work and add the empty canisters. I do the same thing as I do with most of these. I add empty canisters to both packages, and then I let the belts fill up in between the two, and then I top off the packages. I thought running the wires on the ceiling would look a little bit weird with the roof being so slanted like this, so I used beams and just ran them straight down onto the floor. Since all the walkways are so much higher, I didn't think that it would be too much of an issue to just run a couple beams with cables running along them every once in a while. So if you look closely, you can find them. So that's something I may want to try to clean up, maybe look a little bit better. There's just kind of like a random beam here and there. That way I didn't have to run tons of them up into the walkway. I do want a couple more supports probably for the walkways, especially around the corners, just because I think that would make sense. But like I said, the cosmetics part of this isn't done because I still have a bit more to do. Like the packaged turbo fuel will all be here. And then I'm going to take the polymer resin for that side of the factory and all the polymer resin from my 18 gigawatt power factory over there. And I'm going to have that come over here. And that is going to make the plastic that I need for my starter factory. And then one little guy over here is going to make fabric. Because honestly, one refinery making fabric at 30 a minute will provide all the fabric I need to make all of the few parts that require it. But to get all of this to work, like I mentioned, I need other parts of the real factory to start working. I did go ahead and add a belt bus that's going to take all of the different products to the train and bring in the products that I do need. So I don't have them labeled over here, but there's a couple things that I'm going to need. So I'll go over the different load balancers and stuff that I made. I just actually made that one a blueprint. In the next one, when I come back to this factory to make the rest of it. So there are still some other parts that I haven't gone over, like that weird box over there that has a belt coming out of it. But for now, this is just the rubber. I will go over and show it off later, but I created a little, I don't know, terminal kind of area where I've got some hypertube entrances. I obviously only have places for 2 of them to go. One is coming here, one is going to the other power plant. The other 3 are just for future factories that I know I'm going to build out here eventually. And then next to it is where I'm going to put the priority power switches, because I thought having them at the train station, so it's a little bit more centralized for this whole area, would be kind of nice. So I will show that off later, but the hypertube on this end doesn't work until I flip the switch. The beauty of the priority power switches is that I can place one anywhere. This isn't connected to anything. Obviously we've got a red light, but I can still come over to the circuit break priority and it's gonna freak out for some reason. But I can just flip this switch from anywhere and we can get this whole process started. And here we go. And now that all the machines over here have turned off, I can go back to the crude oil extractors and make sure that we back those up first. Alright, let's go back and turn it all on. Got a nice little stockpile of the polymer resin. So now we just need to take a Mark II belt and connect that and watch it come to life. Just about to say they're all staying on. Okay. Well, now it looks like they're finally all staying on. I've stayed on for a little bit now, so I think it's safe to say we're up to 100%. I really thought one would turn yellow right as I said that. But if we take a look at our power, it's staying pretty consistent now. It's obviously we've still got some fluctuations. I haven't made all the factories to be on it 100%. But now I have a nice steady flow of 405 rubber per minute headed back to my train station. Instead of falling into the ocean, let's take the hypertube. And ta-da! The train station. So still needs a roof and a few more walls, but I don't know quite how big it's going to get because I need some more factories out here first. And apparently this isn't high enough for a sink to stick through, so instead of having the antenna stick through the floor, I just deleted one. But we've just got that 405 rubber all headed to a sink right now. And I went ahead and labeled what all of these belts are going to be. So I've got my 30 fabric. Eventually, to get the turbo fuel to work, I need to bring in 315 empty canisters and 180 compacted coal from the main factory over to here to get the rest of this to all work. So right now, we just have the rubber, but eventually I'll have 140 plastic, the fabric, and then both of the packaged fuel and turbo fuel. Let's take a quick peek. Oh, we're doing all right. It's always a good idea to use a buffer whenever you're using trains because the belts do pause whenever it's doing the loading or unloading animations. But I actually think I'm probably going to move these downstairs because for the inputs, I can just plug those straight into the containers and that's all I need on this end. But for the compacted coal and the canisters, I'm going to want to do some load balancing and there's just much more space down below. So this will probably get changed a bit. So here's the little power switch and hypertube hub that I created. So right now I just have the priority power switch for this one over here. Since the other one already kind of had a permanent spot, I'm just going to leave that one over there. But it is nice being able to have a hypertube to get over there so I don't have to just take zip lines. And it spits me out right here. And it's still working like a charm. And whenever I want to go back, it's really easy. You can just run right back into the hypertube. I think this factory is going to look pretty cool once it's completely up and running. But for now, I will gladly settle for 405 rubber per minute. Now that I've got a decent amount of rubber available to me, I can finally start building the first floor to my main factory. I am excited to finally get this started, and only a little nervous. One of the first parts of the factories that I'm going to need to build, and I'm probably going to build around it because it's going to take up such a big amount of space, is I'm going to make about 4,800 iron ingots. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.